All right, welcome back. We are Game 2004. That's Game Engines 2 in the winter 2026 semester at Georgian, and it's week 5, part 1 of our broadcast and recording. And let me just do a little bit of housekeeping like we normally do. This week we're talking about interior level design 2, and I'm going to follow up with you guys on how your interior level has started, if you started it or if you're working on it. We have one more week of this design stuff, and then we're into our midterm test. So it's really, I'm going to ask you to do something that is kind of matching with what I've asked you to do so far. It's going to be something that is going to be within 3 hours, in person. That's the plan, and it'll be very straightforward. It'll be finishable, but you need to have practiced, doing some of the level design stuff that we talked about. I will be looking at key points, and I'll give you a rubric. Things that you can practice ahead of time next week. That's my plan. So that way you can, do a little bit more practice. When you're given something to do, you can put it together, and it shouldn't take you that long. It's an individual assignment, so that's like the exam assignment that you'll be doing. It will be worth 20% of your grade, so it's important that you have practice and all that stuff. But that's coming up on week 7. And next week we're going to talk about interior to exterior transitions and trigger volumes and portals, all that kind of stuff we're going to look at next week. And we're also going to be talking about streaming versus loading and that kind of thing. So that is the plan for next week. But before we go there, let's talk about this week. So this week, like I mentioned in my announcement, I will not be available in person. Only because lots of stuff going on at home, and I feel badly about it because that's not my plan, but that's what it is. And Friday I'm going to be in Toronto Western Hospital for my wife. She's got a procedure she's got to do, so we're going to be there at 6 a.m. and her thing starts at 8, so it's going to be like leaving here at 4, kind of thing, and all kinds of stuff. So it's kind of a weird, freaky day on Friday, and it's a long day, so I'll most likely, and I'm not going to say exactly what I'm going to do because I'm playing with the idea of recording ahead of time, maybe recording after, but I will announce what I'm going to be doing. You will get a recording for your AI course. That's the one that's going to be affected, and I won't be in person. It'll be also asynchronous, so there will be a recording available for you guys, and there'll be a bit of an exercise for you guys to do. So that's coming up on Friday. Again, tomorrow, same thing. I'll be remote, but we'll be doing multiplayer, and that's what's happening there. Before we move on, I wanted to talk to you a little bit because we got a small agenda today, not too crazy. I wanted to talk about some stuff with you, and then do a bit of a case study on something that we can look at together. But first things first, how did you guys find your assignments? I know that there's a lot, that we just did. Like there's 3 assignment 1s. Some of you participated in Global Game Jam, and that's great. Some of you did not, and that's okay too. I have to tell you that Global Game Jam was pretty busy. I think last year there was a lot of enthusiasm. I think this year I saw some people there too that participated, which is nice. But I don't know. I think it was a different feel this year altogether compared to last year. So there were a few games that got made, and if you take a look at that Global Game Jam site, you can see the games that were made. I think the trick with game jams in general is remember to keep it small. So don't try and it's not a full game. You don't have a lot of time, so you have to really prototype and keep consistent with the stuff that you're doing. Alex says he found all 3 assignments went well. Mainly came down to having good communication with my group member. Yeah, I think that's cool too. I think if you, if you're communicating with people and you keep on track, you schedule it, I think it can be done. I'm glad. And so Vincent says, he had a lot of fun with game engines too. Look, I think this is an opportunity, guys. This is one of the last times that we're going to be doing art together. Do you know what I'm saying? I think at least in the first 2 years. And in 3rd year, I don't think there's any of it. I think it's all technical. So I think there's an opportunity for you to build. And we also talk about level design. I don't think you've ever had formal level building. I think you've been told how to do it, like high level, but I don't think there's ever been, kind of an in-depth on level design, environmental design, and that kind of stuff. And that's what this course is, right? So I want you guys to take as much as you can out of it, because it's an opportunity for you to slow down sometimes. It does take time, because any modeling or anything like that takes a lot more time than if you're coding, I think. There is a little bit less debugging with the modeling part, but I think it's still like bringing it into Unreal Engine. There's like that whole transition piece and import and export, all that stuff. It's time consuming. Just like Logan's saying, it's not bad. Multiplayer, yeah, I know multiplayer is always challenging, and Damien says AI was the trickiest, and some things broke. That's okay. Again, it's like, I'm looking at things, with what I've given you. I'm trying to give you as much as I can, for your assignments. That's the scope of it all. There are pieces that you're supposed to figure out on your own, and there's some trial and error, and that's part of what we're doing here, right? Trying to kind of show you the way with some of this stuff. Multiplayer is difficult because there's a lot of moving pieces, and it's an approach. Once you have the right approach to multiplayer, then it's okay. It's challenging because like you have to figure out, what are you going to do next? What is the appropriate switch to turn on, as an example, or construct to put together for whatever the use case is. For user interface, it's something. For replicated properties, it's something else. And it can be challenging to put all that together, right? For animation, it's this other thing. We're going to talk about that a little bit this week and next week for Interactables. So I think it's getting there. But yeah, you're going to see there's some challenges around that. For all the different assignments, like I said, well, except maybe not for this one, but for all the other ones, for the other two, game AI and multiplayer, you will be given a starter, and it'll be everything up to date, all the stuff that we've been doing together, complete, up to date with the stuff that I've asked you to do for the most part. Not all the assignment stuff is going to be completed in there. That was for you to do, but there'll be some pieces from the assignments that are in there. So that way you can jump off from there, and there'll be things I ask you to do that are different than what I've asked you to do already. But for the most part, it's using the tools we've been playing with this entire time. They do take time. All these assignments take time, and the other thing is coordination, communication with your team member. And hopefully, like I said, everyone had a chance to partner with somebody. I know that there are some people that decided to work alone, or that ended up working alone because, that's just the way it worked. It worked out, right? And that's okay. But I highly recommend, if you haven't had a chance to group up, especially for assignment 2, for some of these things, there's more to do. Interior level design is different than exterior level design. There's a lot more details in terms of putting things together. Well, actually, I think they're kind of the same in many ways, but it's just a lot more because I'm asking you to put together a modular kit. So I think that's something that you have to be careful around as we move forward. So that is, I wanted to talk to you about it because hopefully it wasn't too bad. Like I'm not trying to make it so it's impossible to finish or anything like that. It's supposed to be fun, and there's supposed to be learnings coming out of it, and hopefully all of this is supposed to support the game you're making for Level Up and for for Rise. So one thing that I have to talk about is I'm kind of supporting both things, exterior and interior. Some people have an exterior type of game, where they're doing something outside. There's your exterior level design, and then lighting, and then the interior part. Some people are doing that for their game. And there's your interior part. So we're gonna, get you. Hopefully, some of this will help, refine and make things better for your game. So what I want to talk about a little bit is a little bit of a recap of what we talked about so far with interior level design. There's a lot. Okay, interior level design has a lot of concepts and that kind of stuff. And I think the most important thing is structure, flow, readability, and intention. I think that's the main thing, right? So. Make sure that I like that. Alex is saying that he wants to make progress each day, and I think that's a good thing on assignments. So structure, flow, readability, and intention, because I think the most important thing is when it comes to designing stuff, we don't want to be random. So one thing I asked you guys to do last week was sketch out what your level might look like and start putting it together. And that's what we started with last week. And then we also talked about rooms with purpose. Like every room has a reason for being, kind of thing. Don't just design a room because you're just slapping a room together because I asked you to put rooms together in your level. Make it so that there's a story behind them. Like, why is this thing here? What's this thing about? What's the theme? Is it more of a fantasy theme? Is it more of an adventure theme? Is it modern? What is it? And there's lots of really great tools out there that you can use, to do that. So things like transitions and paths between, between levels or between rooms. That's important too, and that kind of stuff. And one thing is that, when it comes to assets, make sure that they match the things that you're creating. We talked about modular design and how it's essential to create levels. Even for these AAA games, a lot of times they use the same modules, and then what they do is they use decals, right? So basically things that are going to make things look slightly different, and it's a lot easier to do it that way. So it looks like every pillar or column is different, but actually the exact same pillar or column, but they've added a decal. They've added another layer of texture, basically, that's on top of it. And I think that's really nice. I think it's a good way of doing it because it speeds up design, and that kind of stuff. And you can make a level really customized looking and everything else. A lot of that stuff is things like blood stains and paint and cracks and all those things. All those things can be added after the fact. One thing we also talked about was scale, and how it's important to make sure your scale is correct, especially indoors, because you make a door and it's too big, your character looks small, unless the door is supposed to be really massive, like whatever, like a double massive door or whatever. But all the other furniture must be the same, the kind of like to scale for your character, right? So that it feels like they can live in that place or they can maneuver in that place, unless you're in a place like for giants, like let's say you're Jack and the Beanstalk and you're going to a place and things are massive and you're really, really small because that's the theme, but if it's not the theme, then the level should scale properly with the character. And the other thing was lighting and how it can support, it can guide our character from one part of the level to the other. We talked about these things last week, and improve readability. And for me, readability means like, what's this level about? Like understanding, I think is more, what's this room? Well, what am I doing here in this room? Is it a combat room? Is it a room that I'm going to rest in? What am I doing? So today we're going to talk about refinement a little bit, and we've kind of started off blocking out our scene. That's what we did last week, and our level. And I want to talk about a few things that we're going to emphasize anyway, which is I want to talk about gameplay spaces. So it's not just about making the level, but what gameplay are you going to do there? Are you going to fight? Are you going to explore? Is it a puzzle? Like, what's that game space about? The other thing that we want to try and do as much as possible with level design is, add verticality. It makes it more interesting. A flat level, like, completely flat with no stairs, no climbing, nothing, it becomes boring, because you're just kind of looking at the same thing over and over again. It's like one flat plane. It can be interesting. I mean, if it's a spaceship or something like that, a lot of times, you may not have a lot of verticality. You might have corridors that are very long and curved or whatever, depending on the type of ship you're on. Or if you're in a catacomb somewhere, like, deep in the ground, as an example, there may not be a lot of verticality until you get to a cliff, as an example. Maybe there's an underground cliff and waterfall or something like that. Again, some of these things add to the whole majesty of what you're doing, the game, the feel, the environment, all that kind of stuff. Some of it's because, you want to position a player to give them an advantage, or sometimes if they're really tough, a disadvantage. You're bringing them in, where people are mounted on a cliff, as an example. Remember that in real life, when it comes to strategic, kind of like defenses, people don't look up a lot. They kind of look around here. Actually, it was kind of in my AI slide last week when we talked about, sensing, AI sensing. We don't look pretty much, above here. We don't kind of, very rarely do we look up. That's why like death from above is a tactic. You know, like you're in a tree, jump down on a guy, you know, you get him from behind or something like that, because they just don't, they won't see that, you know, as an example. People don't look up. And so the advantage is if someone is on a cliff or up, you know, kind of like on higher ground, let's give them higher ground advantage. People can't get to them, so melee combat is not possible. Let's say if you're playing that kind of game, you know, and it's a lot of times it's some kind of missile weapons, you know, bows, that kind of stuff, whatever it's going to be, guns, you know, that are going to be used. So ranged combat is something that we're going to be in that realm for a bit, and maybe there's a combination, like there's, you know, some kind of people with Overwatch or archers that are, you know, kind of attacking the character must have to dodge, those kind of things. At the same time, they're fighting someone that's, you know, that's in front of them. So there's a lot of different aspects. So it can be, with verticality, you can put a player in an advantage or in a disadvantage. And the other thing that you want to think about is the advantage, you know, which is, you know, the character comes in, sneaks up to a ledge, sees a monster from, you know, from below or whatever, a boss monster, attacks it and cheeses out. You know, like they kill it from above, or they find a way to climb up. You give them the opportunity. This is the, you know, dynamics that we're talking about of the game, by being able to climb, some climbing mechanic or whatever, and they get up and they're able to attack an AI without it being able to strike back, because a lot of times, it doesn't matter what game, even AAA games, you know, there's ways of defeating every AI. You know, I'm going to show you that today with Elden Ring. We'll talk about that a bit. So it's about making, you know, kind of these, you know, choices, intentional choices, things that you're going to make in terms of how you're building things. There's two types of spaces that we want to think about for this week, which is gameplay spaces and transition spaces. So gameplay spaces is something you're going to do. Like I said, it's going to be a puzzle. You know, there's going to be some kind of exploration. There's going to be some combat. There's going to be something, right, going on, interaction, a conflict, whatever, right? It's going to challenge your player. And then there's transition spaces, corridors, you know, elevator, stair climbing, you know, like some kind of like tree limb or whatever it's going to be, you know, a tunnel, whatever, right? Those kinds of transition spaces are, you know, corridors, hallways, stairways, all those kind of things are the places where they move from one room to the other. It's almost as if, and I'm not sure if you guys have, did they discuss the hero's journey with you in first year at all? I hope they did. Maybe that was a Joss thing. Anyone remember that? Anyone know about that? Yeah, so the hero's journey, which is really cool in narrative, yeah. And so the way the hero's journey works, for those people who remember or who don't remember, it's broken up into 3 acts. Okay, so that's kind of the story elements that we're talking about. So the first act is, you know, kind of your introduction, introducing the story and the character. Within 10 minutes, right, of watching a movie, basically 10 pages of a movie script, you're expected to have the following. The hero should be understood, who that person is, you know, the genre. So what's this movie about? What kind of movie is it? Is it a space movie? Is it a modern movie? Is it a, you know, what is it? You know, as an example. The villain should be, you know, there, or the conflict, whatever the conflict is, should be apparent. Whatever the challenge is for the character, we should know what it is within 10 minutes, right? And if we don't know what it is within 10 minutes, many of us will turn it off, right? It's the same thing for us when we play a video game, you know, as an example. I like it. Hero with 1,000 Faces, Joseph Campbell, right? One of Rui's, if you ever talked to Rui lately, or, you know, and this, I'm not sure if you guys have him at all, but if you talk to Rui, it's one of his favorite authors, which is Joseph Campbell. Hero with 1,000 Faces, what he wrote. And they took off from A Hero with 1,000 Faces, and they created The Hero's Journey. And I think The Hero's Journey is a great book. We should all read, especially when it comes to developing story and that kind of stuff. So if I look at The Hero's Journey, or I think it's The Writer's Journey is what I'm talking about. Writer's Journey. So if you look at The Writer's Journey, and this is the one, Mythic Structures for Writers. It's a great little book. It's not that big, written in 2007. It was one of these books that I really consumed. Like I ate it up. And again, this isn't narrative design when we're talking about, but it's related to narrative design, right? And one thing he talks about in this book, right, a lot of times, is this the stages of the hero's journey, which is the ordinary world, and you're moving from one type of world to the other. The call to adventure, which is like, hey man, you got to fix this. There's a big bad over here, and you got to help me out. And if you don't help me, bad things are going to happen, right? And the hero's going to be like, oh, I'm not good enough, or I don't feel like this isn't my thing. It's nothing to do with me. It's not my job or whatever. And then something's going to happen, whether it's the hero has no choice but to do it. They're forced to do it. Either they're going to be put in jail, or whatever, or their family's been killed, or someone's been threatened, and they need to do this thing, whether they like it or not, right? They get convinced this is what they need to do now. And so it moves the story forward, and they meet somebody that's going to help them out to transition from the old world, the ordinary world, into the new world, this other place. And what they're going to do is they cross the first threshold when they commit wholeheartedly. And they take this journey a lot of times. They go from, one place to another place. And that journey, that transition is what we're talking about here, but in micro form. So we're moving from, one room to another room. We're still talking about the hero's journey. There's a threshold. You're crossing over from one area to another area, right? You're moving from one world that you've just conquered, that you're the master of that world, now to a new one, right? And that new one is going to offer new challenges. There's going to be new trials, all that kind of stuff, hopefully, or some of the old ones, but maybe a little bit to the next level, as an example, as you move from one place to the other. Even when you're talking about the story itself, it's almost like we're doing these little micro arcs, the major arc of the story that, the story in 3 acts, that's happening. But inside the story, every scene, every level, it goes from a positive to a negative, or a negative to a positive. If the level stays the same, it's useless. Like if one room to the other room, there's no change, as an example, you've got to consider why that room is there. Is it a transition? That's okay. If it's a connection from one level to the other level, one room to the other room, that's okay. But if there's no change, like there literally isn't, nothing you've learned, nothing you've gained, nothing you've lost, from one thing to the next thing, maybe you should consider taking it out or changing it, right? So the hero's journey keeps going, and they fight the big bad, they figure it out, and at the end, after they win, the hero transforms. The hero dies and is reborn, as an example, the resurrection. And when they're reborn, and more so with The Matrix as a good example, if anyone watched The Matrix 1990, than anything else, you can see that character dies and is reborn into a whole new person altogether, and now they're the master of both worlds. And this idea of being the master of both worlds, where the hero is not just, when they return back to where they came from, it's like, what? They've learned a lot. They've changed. And that's the whole thing. The hero changes as they go through. And that's really the hero's journey. So I'm talking about this because that's what it is here for our transition spaces. When we move from one place to the other, you're doing a little micro journey, a journey from one room to the other room. And I want you to think about that a little bit, if you can, when you're moving from one thing to the other thing. Back to verticality. So again, we talked about tactical options for verticality when we're making something. You can create a hierarchy, right? So you're here below, you need to get over here, and then as you continue on, when you're climbing something, a cliff, or you're going into a castle, or you're going through a corridor, or whatever you have to do, it can be very interesting. As you're moving forward, things like stairs and ramps that will move you higher. It could be cliffs that you can jump to, one cliff to the next cliff. It could be a ladder, and those kind of things that you'll see. Things that'll be able to transition you to a higher plane, right? And not just a higher plane physically, but sometimes tactically and even emotionally, right? Is what you're going to be experiencing if the level's designed well. So again, we don't want to make it so that vertical game spaces, are designed so that you need to have your character do a lot of jumping. The problem with jumping, do you really want to make a platformer for the character in 3D? It's very challenging, I'm not sure if you guys ever play like a 3D platformer, but it's not my kind of favorite game. I'll be honest. Even if there's parts of the game that is a 3D platformer, I don't know how many times I'll fall and die, or whatever. And a lot of times because of, it really depends on your perspective. If you're playing a first-person perspective game or a third-person perspective game, sometimes third-person perspective is a little easier, sometimes it's a little harder, so maybe it's just easier to play a first-person perspective game. But the problem with first-person is you really don't gauge the distance. You don't know where you are. Like you have to go further on the edge of a cliff or on a platform. But you can do that with third person, especially if you're, kind of over the shoulder or, a little bit further back. So vantage points are important, and what you want to do is you want to plan verticality. It's not just, hey, you want to add in a level that's, that's got a lot of scale, and just because, you have to make sure that there's a reason for it, that it's there because, it gives the player opportunity or challenge. Sight lines, which is something we've talked about before on when you're exterior, when you're looking, kind of whatever you're looking through. You look through the forest on the exterior, and you see in the distance a temple, a castle, a spaceship, a building. You see the city, whatever, right? You see a monster, an outline, a silhouette, but you see it through the, maybe you see it through the trees. Maybe there's like something moving way down there, as an example. That sight line is important for a bunch of things: storytelling, anticipation, and of course you're gonna, as soon as you get to a certain point on the exterior, you're gonna have maybe some sound that changes, a foreboding sound that just before the combat happens, hey, you know what? Something's different now. You're going into another area. It's the same thing for interior, but with interior, things that you want to do is you want to do the reveal. So don't plan to make rooms, as an example, that are completely open. Like you walk in and there's like, it's a big open room. Oh well, I can see the end. I know where I'm going to go and whatever. Sometimes it's best, to do things like there's a bit of a turn. As an example, there's some detritus, debris, something that's blocking the character's view because they have to get into that room. You want to draw them in, right? And that kind of stuff. It gives you the opportunity to reveal the big bad or the treasure, or surprise them with a surprise attack, or a bunch of stuff, as an example. And it can all be done with triggers, so they walk through and then there's some kind of trigger collider equivalent. And once they walk into that room, they get slammed by a creature because, and I always think about things like exterior and interior when I look at things like Bloodborne or Souls-like games where they scare the crap out of you when you walk through and you're like, you get, and then you wouldn't have seen it because they're hiding, like on the side when you get clobbered, as an example, right? So sightlines are important, and sightlines are important because it creates a lot of stuff. You can frame objects with lighting as well. So you're looking through a door or you're looking through the crack, in a wall or something like that, and you see something, and you know that you need to go there, as an example, with no directions. There's nothing that says, hey, go this way, as an example. Keep going. There's a marker, like a UI marker. UI markers, guys, if it exists in your game, they're okay, but they're non-diegetic. Remember the difference between diegetic and non-diegetic? What's diegetic and non-diegetic? Does anyone remember that? Does anyone know what I'm talking about? In game or not? Yeah. So a good example would be, in real life, can I pull up a map and I know where I am on the map? Like, not really. You have to look through and go, yeah, in game or not. When I'm looking through, like, in the story itself, can I see, my health level in real life? I can't tell, right? So any kind of health bar or anything like that, points, things like a user interface, that's all non-diegetic stuff. And there's going to be part of that in your game. Every game has something like that, right? But there's going to be diegetic things, like, that you're looking through. For example, there is no arrow that's in a fantasy game that's saying, go here. Typically. It's not normal. If you have to put that in your game because you're like telling the character they have to do something, it's usually because it's a tutorial scene that you want to show them something. Like a pop-up that says, do this, because you're showing them what to do. But other than that, using those kind of directives, like very heavy-handed, like go here, fight the creature or whatever, you shouldn't do that. It should be more like, hey, here's a cutscene, and the cutscene's telling you what, showing you a little bit more of the story. You're meeting something, or whatever. But try and be as much as possible. And this is the kind of game you are. Some people make all kinds of non-diegetic things, that they have in the game. Health bars, heads-up display that doesn't make any sense, like doesn't match with the character, the world or whatever. Character shouldn't see that. That's for you, and anything that's for you specifically, for the player, non-diegetic, right? Diegetic is like the character sees he's bleeding, right? Imagine if it was a game like this, you see you're bleeding, and a good example of that, and you hear in the game your character is panting, oh god. And they say they talk like that a little bit. Maybe on the corners of your vision, they use a vignette, some kind of thing where the vision dims and you see kind of or blood specks on your when you get hit or whatever. They do those kind of things to kind of produce almost like this more of a diegetic feel to being hit and being wounded, right? Because there's no such thing in real life as a health bar, right? We can't see that typically. So music is interesting, right? Because music guides us. Music creates tension. Music is, if you look at some of the oldest, game designers, they always talk about how music was more important than the graphics, right? Even when the graphics were crappy, the music was awesome. Or they added little, they changed the music a little bit to make it more interesting for the characters. So Sightlines is kind of like that. It's what can the character see, not necessarily what do you see as a player, but what your character, what do they see? If you look through their eyes, if you're at their level, as an example, maybe sometimes you have to rotate the camera and maybe even clip through a wall, as an example. You have to kind of push the camera so it, it doesn't see the character at all, but actually it sees the game world. So when it comes to interior polish, we want to add detail. And again, we talked about last week and even 2 weeks ago, the idea of big to small, a few weeks ago. Block it out, put your basic things down, your shapes and all that stuff, and then go smaller and keep going smaller and smaller and adding more detail. That adding more detail sometimes can be to, get to the point where it's too cluttered, it's too busy, as an example. But if you look at a modern room, like take a look at your bedrooms, my friends, or your common living area, like your kitchen, there's a lot of clutter. Most houses, people have a lot of clutter. Some people are very organized. I might go into someone else's house as an example, and it's like, holy crap, they're so organized. Everything's in its place, as an example. Especially if it's at a party or something like that. They've organized things. They look nice. But then during, regular living things, everything's all over the place, Some people have a lot of knickknacks in their house and that kind of stuff, especially if in different areas, they might have things that they've bought from different places, they traveled or whatever, put things, whether it's in the washrooms or in whatever, lots of knickknacks. Real estate agents, when they come and, you hire somebody sometimes to sell your house or your apartment or whatever, they might look through and they might go, clean all these knickknacks up because it's too much clutter, right? Clutter is something that, kind of dots our lives with all kinds of little material items that we've collected from a long time. Why am I talking about this? Because these are all props, my friends. If you think about, a house, they tell a story. If you look at a room and you see all the clutter in the room and the stuff that's in a room, why is it there? But it really speaks to the personality of the person or the people that are in that place, in that space. So that's why when you add more details and you add clutter, make sure that clutter makes sense. It's not just random, debris on the ground. If you're making a zombie type game and you have a bunch of, blood everywhere, okay. But there might be other things that are, that are there as well. Like, for example, if you've ever seen things like The Walking Dead, when that was a thing, not a thing anymore. But, the characters in the story would go from one house to the other sometimes, and they would find, like, plates that were rotten, food, flies, that kind of stuff, because, they were attacked. And you might see signs of an attack or whatever. There might be someone hiding in that place or whatever, like inside of a cabinet or but meanwhile, the idea here is that you're looking at a space that's like with stuff that's rotting. That's the theme, rot. and destruction, especially in games like The Last of Us and those kind of games. Like there's a lot of props and detritus, debris, that kind of stuff that's all over the place, but it speaks to the last time those things are visited, right? So that's what we're going to talk about. So what I don't want you guys to do when you're making your level, your interior level for assignment 2, is don't add like tons of stuff in there just because. There should be things that are in there that make sense. Like if you're going into a temple, maybe there's going to be some pots and there's going to be some broken pots, as an example. But it's not going to be all broken pots, and maybe there might be some symbols, on the wall. Let's say, especially if it's a holy place or some kind of place of ritual, but it doesn't have to be like, completely cluttered with everything. It's sometimes reduction is important. It makes sense to have it there, but you have to kind of balance it between those two things. So I invite you guys to get me to look at your stuff before you submit. Even I know we didn't have a chance to for assignment 1. Like I haven't looked at your stuff before you submitted, but try and get me to look at it. I'll give you guys feedback, right? My perspective on what I think you should add or what I think you should remove. Okay, because again, polish doesn't necessarily mean adding stuff and making it more complex. It might mean things like, hey, this is what's missing, and I want to add this, or this is not realistic. It's too clean. What I'm saying? Because most rooms, especially interior levels, are not always clean. Like there's stuff around. Whether it's a spaceship, and I'm thinking Star Trek, the latest spaceships or whatever, the new Trek, or the old ones, or Star Wars or whatever like that, where there's a totally different feel to different ships. One that's it looks more primitive and clunky, and another one looks more high tech and futuristic. But each one of these spaces has stuff that's in there. It's not just the panels. It's not just the walls that are glowing with neon lights or whatever behind them. It's other things that are in the room that you're going to see. So that's something that you want to consider as well. We talked about environmental storytelling. We've been doing that. And that's, like I said, damage and decay. Color choices are important. Like, for example, some places are darker than others. We had a student, like I said, earlier this semester and last semester that was competing for Ubisoft Next competition. I wish I had the example. I've asked him to share it with us so we can see it together. I will share this interior level that he created for the competition. And there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of things. That place told a story. Sometimes I even told him, I said, it might be a little bit too cluttered, but it was a place that was lived in, like, that he created, almost like this, with the theme of secret level. That's what the theme was, or secret entrance. That was the theme for this year that he was working on. One thing that he did was, when he was creating his level, is he made lights, like actual, like these kind of almost like commercial type of lights that you might see in a corridor or whatever, kind of thing. But they were the exact same, right? And typically we don't see that kind of thing in, kind of an older factory or industrial building or something like that. You might see lights that are sparking out. You might see, some kind of visual effect, like actual sparks coming out of them. You might see a light that's, flickering. You might see the light casing, the thing that's in front of the light itself, that is, has, I don't know, it's been discolored for some reason. Maybe there's even liquid or whatever in that area, right? So all these kinds of things are, things that you can do. Variation in a game is important. Even if you're using modular assets, like I said, you can vary some of those things, materials that you're going to use, textures that you modify, or swap out. There's nothing wrong with swapping out a texture or making a duplicate of a texture and changing it, a material instance of that texture and changing the properties, making it a little darker, making it a little, more translucent, or modifying it slightly, tinting it a bit, right? So I think these are all things that you can do. And then the other thing, of course, is how you arrange the spaces. As an example, again, think about real life as much as possible. It's a little dot that I have there for a reason. So again, when it comes to storytelling, layout is really important, because whatever you put in there, like a barricade, or something, a collapsed walkway, or something like that. Again, why did that happen? What's the story that you're trying to tell? So here's a checklist for what I want you to think about when it comes to submitting your work for your assignment 2. Okay, because I wanted to give you this because some of you are going to say, well, like, I'm not sure what he's looking for, because I know when we're talking about art, I can give you, I've given you a rubric already, but some of it seems ambiguous, and it's not as specific as it is for coding. When we're coding stuff, or whatever, I might ask you for a piece of functionality, right? This is not the same, right? So it's like you got to think about what I'm asking for. So again, I ask you these questions, like, what's purpose does this place serve? Like, what is this place about? As an example, why is it here? Did you use verticality, and is it meaningful, or just put it in because? You don't have to use verticality. Like, I'm not saying you must do it. Not every level makes sense for that, as an example. But if you're using it, how did you use it? Are there good sight lines? Did you plan, like, if you walk through the level with your character, it's not just about slapping a level together, but actually, walking through it, testing out the level, just like we did last time, to make sure it was the right sized for what we were doing, right? And then lighting is important. Is it completely dark? Is it the same lighting from one place to the next, from a transition? Do I always need a torch or a flashlight? Is that something that I'm always doing? But, if the answer is no to any of these things that I'm asking here, then I think you should think about it. You should think about, like, hey, is there something I could have done different here? Check out every room, every corridor, every door, everything that you've added into your level. And before you submit, think about it, and think about what story does this, what are you talking about with this thing? So core concepts to remember for this one is layout comes first, okay? Your spaces have to have a purpose, okay? Scale and verticality matter. Sightlines and lighting guide the player, and refinement is about clarity, not detail, okay? So looking ahead for next week, what we're going to be doing is, and this is why I'm talking about this, I'm going to kind of move over to the case study, and then we're going to do a little bit in Unreal Engine, okay? Which is, we're going to move from interior to exterior, from exterior to interior. We're going to talk about the difference between streaming a level and loading a level, and what's the difference between those two things. We want to talk about cohesion, and a cohesion is really around, does the interior match the exterior? Does the story fold from one place that you're playing, one playable area to the next? And if it doesn't, then why are you doing it? It doesn't make any sense. If there seems to be something out of place, or a prop that you're using that's out of time, then again, it'll stick out like a sore thumb kind of thing. You have to make sure that you go through each of these spaces. So I want to talk about this case study in interior level design in Elden Ring. Before we go there, let's launch the game, right? Because I want to talk about this a bit. I'm not going to play the game very long because there's just a lot to do, and I'm not going to start from scratch. I'm going to start with a kind of a current build that I have. I've been going through this game, like, this is like my third time. This build is a little bit more successful than the other two that I had, to be honest. And I find that all Souls-like games are very challenging. I'm just going to switch here to optimize for. I know it's not that great, Logan. Don't be super surprised or thing, but you'll see it. All right. So this is kind of my build that I'm going to get into right now, and then hopefully we can see it when it comes up. All right. Get into this thing. So it's a complex game. Elden Ring is one of these games that there is. It takes hours of play to get to understand the game itself, and there's just so much to do. I think this is a vast game. I think From Software, they really put a lot into it. Okay, this is my dude. Okay, here's my crazy guy. All right. So I just wanted to look at this level with you guys, and again, what I'm hoping is that I want you to give me some feedback and see what you think. I'm not going to necessarily do some combat here, But I'm going to transport you to different parts of the world a little bit here and there. And I want you to think about things like color and weird benches and pews. Yeah, right. But I mean, it is weird, isn't it? But you can see that I'm in a church or some kind of temple, and the lighting is very somber. You can see that, you've got the blue lights and all that kind of stuff. But the detail that we're talking about for every item, whether it's the runner that's going here, kind of the effects that I'm getting from the visual effects. I smashed those up by accident. When you jump in this game, of course, you're able to smash stuff up, right? It's a destructible environment. You've got your place of rest. Whenever you see one of these things here on the ground, this is your place of rest. And so it becomes a rest area for the player. Is it bad? It's not bad. So this is where, we're looking through, as you can see, and you can see it's Caria, right? So you can look through and you can see down the sight lines that we're looking at. So we see two things: silhouettes on the outside, and this is an exterior level design that we're talking about, and then the stuff that's interior. So let's go, back down the corridor, and we're going to transition back into this lower level here. From a verticality perspective, you can also see that there's something above there. Is there something that I can get to later on? As an example, look, I see that there's a stairway or something, or some kind of thing that you can get onto the roof. Maybe there's a way of getting here from another direction, right? The first thing that your character's going to see. Now I've got some stuff. I'm just going to put on the light so you guys can see my dude a little bit more. But you can see again, there's another area down here that I passed through, and this was a transition area, right? That again tells a bit of a story. You've got an NPC type of, that adds to the story and gives you a little bit more information about, the world. But you can see even the books and everything else, there is some repetition. Like if you actually look back, I'm just going to pull back here. And this is, again, AAA game, right? So you get a figure, you can see clearly that there's repetition inside this thing. There's a module build, right? Most players don't look at this kind of stuff, right? And this is the curse of being a designer, my friends. Right? When you look at this stuff and you're like, look at all these books. They look kind of the same. There's a lot of areas, a lot of shelves, if you look closely, that are very similar, right? You can't do much of this, right? I know, for sure, right? It's really kind of cool, but I mean, you can see that I can't really do much. I can't smash up this part of the game at all, right? I can't do that. There's other things here. If I jump around, I can smash those things up nicely. But in terms of like some things here, you can't. Same thing with the brick, and I'm showing you this because, again, this is a AAA game, right? It's a very respected game. So when you look at this thing, you can see that the brick is there, but see the pattern on the wall right here? See that there's like 4 bricks, 1, 2, 3. I'm not sure if you see them right there. If I go back to this, the exact same pattern on this one, right? Exact same pattern. The same, the only thing that's missing, from one thing to the other is, like you said, it's been rotated. Some of the cracks. But the books are invisible. Yeah, some of the cracks are whatever they are. Now here is an interesting area. This goes from interior to exterior. This is a pretty scary level, actually, and these fingers are god awful to fight. Okay, these fingers are like like sentient hands, kind of thing. That if I'm moving away from that, and they're scary as crap. To fight like a dude like this, right? It's pretty. I completely killed it. Okay, it's pretty bad, right? Oh no! And see, this guy's coming at me. I'm not going to fight him. But so this is definitely one of kind of an interior. I want to take you some other places, and if anyone knows any place they want to demonstrate, I can take you to some of them on this build. I haven't been able to unlock everything yet, but it's there. So again, interior to exterior, really cool transition. One thing that they have here is options. Like, what happens if, like, you can see that there's something down there. Maybe I can get down there, you might think, as a thing. But notice what I'm on top of is actually a dude. There's like you can't see it here, but if you kind of move the camera around, it looks like there's one of those crazy, sentient hands that are there. In the beginning, it just looks like, when you're looking at it, it just looks like, I don't know, like a piece of rock. But if you're careful enough, and if you look down with your camera, you're like, wait, that's a sentient hand. that crazy hand is going to kill me, right? So that is something that you'll see. So you might be tempted to go down there. You might try that. And another thing that you know, a lot of times what these games allow you to do is run through. So if you want to just do a speed run and run through, you don't have to fight anybody if you really don't want to. Sometimes you can just run through and not fight these things that will appear. And sometimes, if you're successful, I'm going the wrong way, but if you're successful, you can run right through into the next area, you know, as an example. But in this case, you know, maybe it's just for me to get some stuff, you know, because that's not what I wanted to do. And, you know, just keep on running away, right? But you can see how beautiful the level's laid out in terms of the exterior. This is not exactly what I want to show you, but it's what happens when you play a live game. You know, I'm just going to run away, right? Because I don't want to fight anybody right now. That's not going to put the point of all this stuff. All right, so there we go. Let's get going. See if I can get to that other place without fighting these knights. They're pretty mean knights, eh? They have like some, oh yeah, this guy I might fight. Yeah. The important thing about this build is you're trying not to get clipped, and running in a straight line is always a bad idea. There we go. All right, now this is kind of cool. The way they get from one level to the other. All right, there we go. And we're back to another safe area. There we go. Now, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to rest because I haven't really fought anybody, so it's you know, I'm okay with doing this kind of stuff. So I'll talk about my build a bit. I know it's exactly the same, but I can't level up yet. I'm pretty low, but you know, I'll show you my dude. Here's my equipment. Not bad. I've got a strength and dex build is what I'm doing right now. I'm using the Bloodhound's Fang, which isn't bad, right? And level 62, kind of a mediocre level, starting, you know, in the middle. I got a medium load, so I don't have a light load. So when it comes to dodging, I could dodge a little bit too. But my guy is more of a blocker. I want to use my shields, you know, and that kind of stuff. One of my favorite guys to use is the Banished Knight. He's awesome to fight with, and a lot of times he just takes care of a lot of the guys that I'm fighting ahead of time. So that's kind of my build that I'm using. But again, take a look at some of this stuff. Like, where am I? Look at all this detritus, this stuff that's going on here, right? And when we're moving from, I can see already that this is going to be a bigger fight right here. But I'm moving from one level to the other. So this is kind of an area that we can summon help. You know, so if I kind of touch this area here, I can kind of, you know, summon or activate the summoning pool if I want to summon someone, and I can make a summoning sign. I don't want to fight these guys right now. Yeah, well, yeah, I'm gonna back right up. Oh boy. Yeah, let's get the hell out of there because I'm gonna use my potions. And he's gonna chase me for sure. Yeah. But I'm in a good place because even if I don't kill him, which I should, there we go. There we go. That was fairly badly done, but I made it through. Okay. And let's just get another one of these potions. Okay, here we go. Crackles, I know, right? So again, you don't want to fight all these things, but the great thing is, again, see the transition between exterior to interior to exterior. You have this little landing space. It's a safe space. And now we're into a place where it's a combat area. Now the combat area happens to be outside. I'm gonna run through here, guys. I'm not gonna fight these guys. There's no point. But the combat area is interesting. Yeah, we fought these kind of guys before. This is kind of a big dude. All right. I'm not sure if you ever fought this guy, Logan. Did you? But these guys are. This is where these guys are. There's no way you can get by this guy necessarily. Oh wow. Okay, that's great. Yeah. But at the end of the day, he's an interesting fight. The thing that I don't like about him is these other little helpers that are with him. All right, we're not going to do that right now. I'm not going to do that fight. It's going to take a little too long. And what I want to do now is kind of move out to the map, right, and take a look at some other areas. And one place I like to look at a lot is Stormvale Castle, right? So let's just get in there. Okay, front. There it is. So let's go to the main gate. All right. Beautiful thing about this game is that you can always like transport from one place to the other. And again, I think the great thing about this is you have a lot of choices. So I mean, you may want to try and go through the front gate. That's a bad idea in Stormville Castle. But as we transition to the side, usually there's a dude here when you first come in. That's like your merchant. He moves to another part of the game, especially when you defeat part of the thing. But you can see that. Take a look again. This is the area, and we're moving from interior to exterior. But it's kind of like this is the interior anyway. Lots of verticality here. You're going to transition on the ledge, where you're moving. And this is kind of a beginning area, for players. So, I mean, for you to get through here and everything else, it takes a while. He steals some of your runes. I didn't know that. The bastard. And so the idea here is that you're going to fight some eagles, these Stormhawks that are here. And you can see one of them right here. So again, here's an example of verticality, and it's given the player the opportunity to use tactics in order for you to attack, your enemies, as opposed to, and this you can cheese these off, as opposed to you fighting them on the ground. They're way better at attacking you, as an example, but the AI is not smart enough typically to come up here. So I mean, it's kind of a cheesy way to fight, but it definitely is. It definitely is a way of doing it. And too close to the hill. Let's go over here. But the idea is that you have the opportunity, to play in whatever style you like. Whether it's, I don't think I'll still be able to hit him. No, it's too low. Let's see if I can go somewhere else. See, two little arrows like there. Here we go. All right, there we go. That's a little better. Still can't get me, but I can still peg them off from a distance. These guys can't attack me typically. So it gives me, in this example, it gives me the ability to attack these guys without any kind of consequence, right? Which is a really cool thing. If I want to, I can fight these guys, and that's crazy. On their level, they can swoop in. They're a lot faster than I am, But they're not difficult. They're not overly difficult to interact with, as an example. I'm not sure what your favorite weapons are, Logan or Gage, but for me, the Bloodhounds. I don't know why. I always like playing with that weapon. It's the first thing that I try and get when I go through the world. It's kind of the weapon of choice. This armor I'm trying out for the first time, as an example. But there we go. There we go. He's dead, right? And it's just a matter of waiting it out. Sometimes it's patience. Rivers of Blood. That's always a good one. And sometimes if you're not patient like me, then it's a matter of just going through and doing what you have to do and killing them. Stormhawks. Right? I know, right? There we go. We're not going to fight these guys. We're going to move on. And what the great thing about this is when you're guided through, you're guided into an area with another area of rest. You fight, and there's another area of rest. And it gives you a chance to... they can stagger. Yeah, I guess so. And you see these guys, they're going to come at me. This guy's going to blow his horn. Right? He doesn't like the fact that I'm there, and he's going to come charge at me. Again, these guys, it's a starting area, right? So, whatever. They're not that difficult. These guys are like so low level, So it's like, here, I'll grab their stuff anyway. Because smoldering butterflies I can always use to make, flaming pots. But anyways, the point is you get through here, and now we're back from exterior to interior. This is the study that we're talking about here. Okay, it's not just us playing the game. It's exterior to interior. Here's interior. Kill these two guys. As an example. There's another guy down there that's kind of like an executioner type of dude. I'm not going to fight him right now. And these guys, yeah, I forgot about those guys. These guys are just guys to to guard the area. Couple shots. We'll take them out, but it gives me a chance. Again, this is where verticality for the character is a disadvantage, because they've placed characters out here. Yeah. I'll just kill you like that. They've placed characters out here so that way, it creates an area that it's kind of guided with a path. You can see where it's going to be. Now, the first time you play through this level, as an example, you have to get through this area, and then what you have to do is fight this knight. And of course, the knight's been destroyed, but let me just get you to that point. He's in this room the first time. And this room, what you do is, you fight this this dude that's in here, and he's there again. This guy's a vicious fighter. This knight. Okay, especially when you're first starting off. I mean, the right thing to do is kind of go up from behind him and kill him that way. But at the end over here, let's see if I can. Do I have my stuff open? It does not. Just to illuminate this area, way at the other end, that's where you find the key. And then from there, when you want to go back, it kind of gets you to this area here where you can open up this this door that's been sealed. Okay, it needs a key. And you saw this area back over here. And this door over here, when you first saw it, was shut, and it basically said, hey, you don't have the key for this thing. Again, why am I showing you this? Take a look at what you can see from your vantage point. Take a look at your sight lines here, as an example. There's lots to see. And the way they've planned this level out is you really see a lot of things here. The fact that they've made it open and some of the areas destroyed purposefully, also give you a sense of where you can possibly go when you're playing the game, which is pretty cool. So you go through this area right here. This is the next part of the level. Again, verticality, you can climb the stairs, right? Let's get up there. And then it transitions us from one place to another. Like, I'll tell you, this took a while. The first time I did this, it was like defeating that knight was not easy, right? So, and you've got some more dudes over here, and you can see that, yeah, I knew that was going to happen. But you come up and you can also, there's this really cool sneak mechanic as well in here. But you come up out of this level and you can see that again. Now from interior you go to exterior, and there's a lot of transitioning for the way they've designed stuff. Now, one thing about Elden Ring and Souls games in general, if I jump off that ledge, I'm dead. Like, there's some games you can't even do this. They won't allow you to die. I think about some of the Bethesda games, as an example. They'll stop you actually from doing that kind of stuff, from jumping off a ledge or a cliff. There's usually a knight right here. Yeah, there he is. Yeah, you just have to run away from him. I'm not going to fight that dude. Those are epic battles. But basically what it does is it gets you to the next area, right? And, as you can see, when you're transitioning from one place to the other, there you go, pull the lever. There's also another rest area right here. So again, from one place to the other, there's always a place where you have the fight, and then you can go to rest. And there's a fight, you go to rest. And there's a reason for everything that's here. Now, I really like how they've designed this part. Okay, I'll be honest, right? And the reason for it is, again, you're from a really, really high place here, but you need to get really, kind of down in there, inside of this castle. Take a look at the sight lines again, what you're seeing on the exterior, right? It's an amazing game when it comes to level design. I think one of the things is, that's why I'm using it as a kind of a case study. The ability for you to see stuff, from these vantage points. It's incredible what they've done and the detail that they've put into it, these artists and these designers. So that's what I want to kind of show you. And we can do this a little bit more, but I think I want to take a short break, and I want to get right into kind of the meat and bones of what I was looking for. I'm just going to go back here and rest. I can take you to other places too if you like. If there's a specific space that you want to see interior. I love it too. I think it's one of the best things that you can see. It's kind of the central point to everything that we're doing. Actually, you know what? Here, let's go back up to the map. One thing I love about this game as well is the biomes that they've created. Maybe we shouldn't call them biomes because it's a Souls game, but whatever. They've got different areas, and this is your starting area right here. This part, and this part is should not be a starting area. It's a crazy area that you have access to early in the game. But it's a great place to farm points if you're that kind of person. If you're a person who likes to, farm runes and all that kind of stuff, and do that kind of thing. I found that this castle right here, Fort Ferrith, is probably one of the places that you do that. Let me tell you there for. I'll show you what I'm talking about here. So, again, I think they've added castles and that kind of stuff to death. So again, this is kind of, even though you have access to this area really early on, if you're a beginning character, it's certain death for a lot of different reasons. But the great thing is there was a sleeping dragon that I ended up killing way over there. I think I got 100,000 points, which is pretty cool. So in here, there's a bunch of like these, I'm going to kind of frame it for you, like these vampire bats. And instead of fighting them on my own, I usually cheese out and use my dude, right? Because he is just so much more powerful. And this is kind of a cool thing where you can use almost like an AI companion to cooperate with you. And at the same time, you can still, kill your enemies and farm a lot of points. Even for me still, this is a great place to continue to farm runes and that kind of stuff, because I can come back here over and over again and just use my dude to do that kind of thing, right? And sometimes I die, but that's okay. That's the game that we're playing. Oh, no. And I'm being poisoned nicely, but and like I said, sometimes I die. Even though, you're doing that kind of stuff. Logan says, the only thing I don't like is that since it's done via scaling, it's often hard to tell the strength of an enemy until it's kicking your face in. Yeah, I totally agree. And this is one of those places, I'm just going to grab my runes. This is one of those places where, you know what, no matter how high level you are, it's really interesting, how these things work. But, yeah, I know you're going to come at me. Yep. There we go. But again, it's a great place to farm things like runes and a bunch of stuff. And then because the site of grace is kind of right here every single time, it's to me it's one of those places that are great to go. But I'm not going to do that yet. I wanted to show you a couple more things. Let me just bring out the my trusted little mount, Torrents. All right, which I think is also an amazing thing that they give you way early in the game. Some games don't give you a mount until much later, or a way of traveling quickly throughout the world. And I think the fact that they've done this for this game specifically, which is different than other Souls games, I think is amazing, right? So again, I'm going to show you some sight lines here. And this is exterior, but I want to talk about this a bit. So let's take a look. So if I kind of go on the cliff here, on the edge of a cliff, again, take a look at the weather effects that they've got going on, the silhouette of potentially another castle or a keep that I can go down to. It's crazy, isn't it? So they got like a bunch of stuff down here. I could transition and jump down in there. And try and explore that place. It gives you a sense of maybe I'll try that. That's what you might say. There's other places that you can see from behind. So I can kind of go there, and so you can, it's a bit of, have a little bit of aspiration there to kind of go into a place. That place, by the way, is not someplace you can easily travel to, but I'm just going to zoom there so you can see it, and it's really quite interesting. The stuff that they've kind of created, the story that they're telling, this shattered world that you're at. Is that a dragon? Oh yeah, I think so. So this is one of those places where you want to try and get to, right? You think you can, and yeah, look at that. That is a dragon. We're going to run away from that dragon because I don't want to fight him. And there's different places to go. Like, for example, you can go to... Oh, he's going to come at me for sure. Is he? Nope. So, this area here, where I was trying to get to it for, and then you got this kind of thing happening. Take a look, like all these chairs sitting around, and the designers have a lot of fun when they create this stuff. Let me just put on the light here again so you can see what I'm talking about. Oh, wrong control. Kind of neat. They've kind of put together this little area here, and a bunch of these chairs that are, kind of like formed around the circle. There's no fire or anything like that, but you see a bunch of these figures just sitting here, and you're kind of questioning, like, why are they here? And this is the kind of stuff that the designers take pleasure in doing. They kind of put together these little areas here, and it's trying to get you to think about, like, why have they put these things together, and why is what's the story about? But here's what I want to show you. Okay, going back to that whole seeing the Erd tree from the middle of from anywhere pretty much in the exterior. Take a look at this. Like way over there in the distance, there's this castle that I want to go to. As an example, if I had an aspiration to do that, and if I look at my map, as an example, that is this castle right here. Okay, now this castle right here is, if I go to this area, there's two castles. There's that one, and there's this one. Okay, and this crazy bridge there's a place where it's impassable. There's nothing you can do to get certain places, but I want to get to this castle. As an example, and the way I know how to get there is because you can see where I'm looking here in the map. I'm looking right at it, and this is the thing that they do with you in this game, which is pretty awesome. So the grandeur of the exterior and the planned interior make Elden Ring probably one of the best level design games I've ever played. There are issues, it's not perfect. But I mean, for the time, we're talking about 2022 now, when Elden Ring came out, and specifically for the PS5, it was an amazing game that, really did a lot. I'm just going to get out of this thing because I don't want to keep, I don't want to keep on talking without doing things, and I want to kind of get to doing it in a bit. So I'm just going to move back to optimize for regular sharing here. So thoughts around it, thoughts around the stuff that you've seen. I can't show you everything, but one thing I've been able to do is capture some things that I can talk about in my PowerPoint. Okay, so let's talk about this. So again, it was Game of the Year 2022, which I think is definitely worthy. Shadow of the Erd Tree is probably a crazy DLC that I maybe don't recommend playing for the first time. I think it's so hard. It's like it's harder than anything else that is this game. It's like evil the way they're. It's almost unfair, how it is. So if you ever have that DLC, but the new one that's coming out, there's a new one coming out very soon. But again, one thing is, this is where I took you guys in Stormville Castle, which was Stormville Keep, which is, they've got to exist for clear gameplay or navigational purposes. This guy, right, in the game, he basically tells you what to do. He tells you right away. He says, hey, you can go through the main gate if you want, but there's some, old souls there, or whatever. It's old hands, I think is what he says, and they're really tough. I don't recommend it. Go through the side. Do you want to do that? And then you basically answer him, yes, I do. And he goes, oh, you're the kind of guy that I like, as an example. And he's a merchant. He becomes someone you can trade with and all that kind of stuff. And that's what this room is about. We passed through this room into the castle, and this is kind of the one way of doing it. We avoided the night when we went up here. And again, one thing that we want to see is, the interior layouts themselves should guide us without some kind of user interface or markers or anything like that. We don't need to see stuff. I don't need a map, an interior map to guide me. It'd be nice if we had interior maps, but I think there's a lot here that basically tells you where to go. You can see it, like, you can fight the knight if you really want to, if you want that kind of adventure, that kind of gameplay, or you can avoid him and keep going. It's up to you, right? Which is pretty cool as to give player agency on how they want to play. And that's one thing that this game allows you to do. It gives you agency. You can go fight a bunch of stuff. You never have to actually do the main quest if you don't want to. You can go ahead and do all these side quests and, gather your runes that way. which is kind of cool. The currency of the game and the way you get better weapons and all that kind of stuff is the same currency that you level up with. Kind of positive and negative from a design perspective, because you have to sacrifice leveling in terms of getting stronger weapons. I typically like to separate those two things when I'm thinking about a design, but that's what this game does. Modular construction we've seen, like I said, like when we look at places, even this AAA game, you can see that there's areas that they've clearly copied. It's just like, I think we said it earlier, where they just, rotate something or they flip it, as an example, they can mirror it, and for the average person, they look at it and they're like, meh, they don't see a difference. They look at it's like artistry. It's really cool, right? But actually, it's the exact same thing, and they've added some other things to decorate it, like, for example, different spider webs on this side or whatever, to make it look like, it's a different place. And this is a key thing too. Not at all interior spaces are meant for combat. Some exist, to frame the gameplay, to set you up for the next scene, a safe spaces, as those kind of things, not just a host combat. Sometimes it's like, okay, combat's coming. We're seeing that we hear this noise. Like, remember when I went to that other level in Caria, right, where I saw that, that crazy, kind of a boss or mini boss. Do I want to fight that guy? I could see them. They're standing there waiting for me. If I want to go engage, I could, but it sets things up. That whole transition up those stairs and everything else was a setup, and it's for me to go, and if that's what I want to do, that's part of my story as a player. Do I want to engage in that narrative and fight, or do I want to avoid them? Do I want to sneak in? Like, there's a lot of things that you can do differently. Verticality, we talked about that a bunch, and there's some really great things that we saw here. On the level on the left, I mean, it's just some of the most stressful. I'm not sure if you guys have, done that part. That's the inverted halls, if I'm not wrong. And man, like, it's like I can't tell you how much fear when you first come onto a level like this. When you look at it, and that's one thing that it does for me. Games like this really transport me from an emotional perspective, because I'm sitting there and I'm like, it makes me afraid. And if I'm really afraid in a game, when I'm playing a game, whether I'm playing Doom or something else, that's great. If I'm feeling something when I'm playing a game, that's amazing. It's a great feeling. And I think that's something that we should always strive for. Get our players to feel something, whether it's joy or happiness or fear, which is like a lot of times, like, you're going to die. This is like, it's crazy. Frustration too. Sometimes, these kind of games, especially Souls-like games, can be frustrating because, you made the wrong move, you made a mistake, and that's why increasing your health as much as possible is one of the best strategies in this game, like bumping that health right up. So if you make a mistake, you can recover, right? And you have a chance to continue playing. Here, as a good example, verticality allowed me to kill this grafted scion down here, which is something that I've done. No. I'll tell you right now, no. It's not with this build, but it's it's pretty crazy. The entire place is like I said, I'm still exploring it and everything else, and I've tried it a few times now, but it's a lot of fun. It's honestly, it's I remember playing Dark Souls for the first time, and I was like, wow, I'm so frustrated. This game is so hard, and there's no way of saving. You have to go to the next, the campfire, and but you get used to it. You realize the rhythm of the game. If you persist, it's not for everybody. These kind of games, whether it's Elden Ring or Dark Souls or Demon Souls or one of those kind of games, the Souls-like games, they push players away, right? And they push players away because of the level of difficulty and also, the amount of engagement and hours that you have to spend to get good enough, to get through the game and the story. It takes a while, right? So, sightlines we talked about, and the main thing for me about sightlines is two things. It is the reveal, like we talked about before. And then also, you can anticipate danger. Like, we did that already when I was playing through. I was like, wait, okay, coming up, there's a big fight. I can see it, because I saw this, the summoning sign. This place where I can summon, friends to help me. That means, and guess what? This little, kind of grave marker comes up, which basically shows me that I can, summon some of my spirits to fight with me. That means that there's some kind of boss, whether it's an optional boss that I want to fight or something else that's coming up. Those are non-diegetic things, like the little marker, but the diegetic stuff is like the lighting, the sound, all that kind of stuff that sets you up for a fight. So sightlines are really, really important. and I want you guys to focus on that. And then finally, lighting as structural reinforcement. I think, being in a catacomb has to feel like it's a catacomb. Okay, if it's too bright or if it's too dim, even in Elden Ring, there's light that comes out of nowhere. I mean, if you actually go through the game, there's light that's put in different places, and it's okay. But try and make it as realistic and the source of light something that you can see as much as possible when you're designing a level, and then you're not going to get as much criticism from people who play your game. I think it's important to do. Let's take a short break. We're sitting at 121. We've talked about, we did our little case study. Any questions around this or thoughts? You guys can come on the mic too. I mean, even though we're recording, if you want to talk about this, I think it's good to have a discussion, when it comes to your own levels and your design. Talk about your game a little bit. And some of these elements, are you bringing anything like this into your game, for level up or for rise, right? So anybody want to talk about anything before we take a short break?
Well, I can say a little bit about Cyber Slash because we semi-recently redesigned our levels from the early gray box version
Yeah.
to have way more verticality. So we added like dashing and double jumping and a bunch of new mechanics to our game.
Yeah.
And the level design, the original version, it wasn't keeping up, right? It wasn't, you'd just be spamming double jump for no reason.
Yeah.
So now we have new traversal options. There's different ways to go about the same
problem, challenge. You can use your movement in combat as an advantage, and I think it's a good way of doing things to sort of iterate on it and probably not like go hard into level design until all your mechanics are figured out.
And that's the thing, right? I think that you've got to start off with, like we talked about, blocking things out. Which the gray boxing stuff is thinking about what the level feels like, walking your character through the level, getting all your fight mechanics, your gameplay done. I like to put together test levels a lot of times, just like we've done already, where we've already got a test level, test out your AI, what they're going to look like there, make as many of those as you can, in a test environment, then bring them into the level itself and see how that feels. Make some adjustments again, and you keep doing that back and forth as you're moving between level design and gameplay, right? And sometimes you need, the level itself informs you that you need another mechanic. Maybe you want to do a wall jumping thing, or maybe you want to do some kind of climbing, or whatever you're going to do. Because you might say something like this when you're playing. It would be nice to do this. I wish I could do this with my character, or my, the thing that I'm controlling, or whatever it is. And once you say that to yourself, when you start thinking about new mechanics, that's good. That's a good thing, right? It's not a bad thing if one thing informs the other thing. Sometimes the mechanic informs the level design too, right? Like, well, I have a jumping ability, but I really don't have any place to jump. Well, let's give myself somewhere to jump. I got to jump, right? I want to double jump. I want to be able to roll. I want to be able to crouch. As an example, why am I crouching? Am I crouching just because I can do it? The character can do that, or am I crouching because I need to get through a lower space? Do I create the level so I need to crouch? And they do that a lot with, we've learned stuff like that in other games where they tell you have to crouch, or you have to climb, or you have to do whatever, and they show you the controls early on, right? So I think it's, to your point though, I think it's mechanics definitely are first, and then, gray boxing. Anybody else create their, I know some people are doing interior stuff for their game. Thoughts around Elden Ring? I know some people are, this is not a new game. It's been around for a few years, but it's definitely a great game. Any thoughts before we go on a little bit of a break? And you can come on the mic, or you can type it in the chat. So again, I think for me, the beauty of this whole thing, when you're looking at this stuff, is, again, it's aspiring to to do things better and better, to kind of look and see what these people have done. I think some games give you the ability for you to explore and to really oh yeah, I think so too, Gage. It's one of the most amazing things that they've done. It doesn't matter if it's any of the games they've come out with. They really go into a lot of detail, and not just level design but character design. When we think about those three C's, camera, controls, and character, and when I look at those three C's of game design, you know, what the camera sees is what we're seeing. What is as part of the environment is the level and all those things, and the way we control the camera, which is usually through the character's eyes. In this case, because we're playing a third-person perspective game, is it kind of adds to the narrative. Yeah, I do agree. I think it's something. Sometimes it's like that, like Logan is saying, basically, like you're exploring and you see this really tough place. You fight all these things, and then you get nothing at the end. But it's really, you think so? I don't know. I think it's so far I haven't seen the drop off. I do see the scaling for the leveling that's happening, and they have a lot of level caps that happen. One thing I noticed about the game itself, outside of level design, is the way they do the leveling is interesting. They got like 8 abilities or something like that. To me, or 9. I think to me that's a lot. Like, the reason why Dungeons and Dragons only had 6 primary attributes, there was a reason for that. Because the more attributes you have to think about, then the longer it takes for you to scale those up, and then it becomes challenging for you to be good at everything. I'm the kind of player that I like to kind of have like almost like an even build. I like the strength dexterity kind of build. Some people like only to have strength build or a dex build, or they want to do deal with magic or whatever. But I want to kind of do everything. So for me, my games take a whole lot of time. It doesn't matter which game I'm playing, by the way. It doesn't matter if I'm playing some Bethesda game, Fallout, or Elder Scrolls or whatever, or a game like this, which is totally different. Like, both games have a different tension, or even the last game I played before this one, was the Obsidian game that came out, or Worlds 2, kind of thing. I spent some time there with Avowed and that one, and it's just every single time I play one of these things, it's just like makes me think about things and how to scale and the stuff that they've done in the game. So decisions that they made, because again, everything comes from our friend Dungeons and Dragons, and I always think about, like, if it's linear scaling, so linear leveling up, then the world again supports some of that stuff as well. And nowadays, characters or players don't like that, the curve, the experience curve at all. They like a linear level up, where they kind of get the same points, and when they get points, they go up another level. I don't agree with it. I like the curve. Like, even here, there's a slight curve. It's not so bad in Elden Ring. It's like you don't need, from one level to the other, it doesn't double. That's crazy. Some games do that, where you can't get to the next level unless you double. This is one of these games that has an overall level. This is the system they've made. The system that they've kind of refined from one game to the other, as an example. But I do like the micro leveling. I like the ability, if you're, when you play a game where you can, level a skill, or you add something to your character that requires some kind of skill points or whatever, in addition to rising to the next level overall. I like that a lot more, because then there's more skills. Maybe it's going to be like this, like curve to get up to the next level. But again, these little micro leveling gives you the ability to feel that you're progressing. But anyways, guys, let's take a short break. That's my case study on Elden Ring this week. It's 1:30. Let's take about 10 minutes. When we come back, I'll have a coffee in my hand, and we'll get into Unreal Engine. All right? And a little bit of Blender. And so we'll stop recording.